Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching from tonight? Are you curled up in your cozy home in Dallas? Maybe tuning in from the foggy streets of Seattle? Or perhaps you're listening from a quiet little town like mine, where the most excitement you get is when the mail arrives on time. Because what happened to me? Well, it happened in a quiet place just like that. And it still takes my breath away when I think about it. Let me tell you what happened. It was early spring, the kind where everything still feels damp, and the mornings come with that crisp fight in the air. I had just come in from sweeping the porch. Something about brushing away the dead leaves always calms me when I heard the knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there he was. Thomas, my neighbor's boy, only he wasn't really a boy anymore. He had just turned 25, I think. Tall, strong, with that easy kind of confidence that came from working with his hands. I knew he'd been helping out on construction sites. His mother, Sophia, used to brag about him endlessly until she moved away a few months back. Left the house to him, she said. It's time for him to stand on his own. And clearly he was doing just that. Standing tall on my porch with a bouquet of pale pink roses clutched in one hand. And that smile. I hadn't seen a smile like that in a long, long time. "Hi, Miss Emily," he said, eyes twinkling like he had a secret. "These are for you." I blinked at the flowers. "For me? What's the occasion?" He shrugged with a crooked grin. "Do I need one?" I laughed. "Well, no, but it's not every day a handsome young man shows up on my doorstep with roses." "They reminded me of you," he said, and his voice dropped just a little. A softness that made me look up from the petals and into his eyes. There was a pause, one of those long ones where the silence buzzes a little too loud in your ears. I didn't know what to say, so I stepped aside and gestured toward the hallway. "Come in, I'll put them in water." He followed me inside, his boots heavy on the floorboards. I kept glancing over my shoulder as I moved toward the kitchen, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. How empty, how still. After my husband passed away 3 years ago, the house had settled into a sort of quiet grief. I kept it tidy, made tea in the afternoons, and tried not to notice how the days ran together. My son visited when he could, but he lived 2 states away. Most nights it was just me, a good book, and the steady hum of the fridge. Thomas's presence changed that. He filled the space like sunlight slipping through blinds. He leaned against the counter as I rummaged for a vase. I could feel his eyes on me. Not in a predatory way but attentive, like I was something worth really looking at. I wasn't used to that. "Your hair looks nice like that," he said suddenly, nodding toward the loose bun I had tied up earlier. "Kind of elegant." I smiled a little surprised. "You're awfully charming today." "Maybe I've always been charming. You just haven't noticed." That made me laugh again. But it wasn't just the words. It was the way he said them. Slow, measured, like he was feeling out something deeper than small talk. I placed the roses in the vase, trimmed the stems, and added a little sugar to the water. My hands were steady but my heart not so much. When I turned back around, he was closer than I remembered. Not crowding me, just near. He smelled like fresh laundry and cedarwood. His shirt hugged his arms, sleeves rolled just below the elbows. He looked older than 25 in that moment. Or maybe I just felt younger. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said, voice low now. His eyes dropped for a second, not to my chest like some might, but to my hands. The same hands that had soothed babies, helped my husband, cleaned years of dust and dishes. He looked at them like they mattered. "About what?" I asked, fine to sound light, but there was a nervous flutter in my stomach. He lifted his eyes. There was something behind them, something that made my throat go dry. "About how I feel when I'm around you." I didn't breathe. I couldn't because everything in me froze. I should have brushed it off, laughed, made a joke maybe. But the way he said it, not with arrogance, not with bravado, it wasn't some immature crush. It was honest, raw, scary even. "I know it's strange," he said quickly, like he could hear my thoughts rushing. "And I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I needed to say it." I leaned back against the sink. My fingers gripped the edge. My voice, when it finally came, was soft. "Thomas, you don't have to say anything." He cut in. I've thought about this about you for a while now." My heart thudded it deep and loud. I was 66. I had crow's feet and silver strands and a history etched into every part of me. And here was this young man, someone I'd watched grow up from a distance, looking at me like I was still worth loving. It was terrifying and thrilling and wildly confusing. "Why now?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, not cocky but tender. "Because I finally had the nerve. And because I brought you flowers today, not just for the way you always smile at me, but because you make this street feel like home, like something more." There was that pause again, but this time I didn't try to fill it. I let it sit between us, thick with possibility. He stepped back. "I should go. I didn't mean to make things weird." And with that he turned, headed toward the door. I stood frozen, roses behind me, the smell of them sweet and thick in the air. Before he opened the door, he turned back just once and said the words that truly stopped my heart. "Just think about it." Okay. Then he was gone. And I was left standing there in the kitchen, heart pounding, breath shallow, wondering how a simple bouquet of flowers could change the course of everything I thought I knew about myself. The flowers stayed on the counter all night. I didn't move them, didn't rearrange them, didn't even top off the water, though I noticed one of the petals had already started to wilt a little by morning. And every time I passed by, I'd pause. My hand would drift near the vase, then retreat, as if touching them would somehow make last night more real, or worse, make it impossible to pretend it hadn't happened. I barely slept. I kept seeing Thomas's face when he said those words. Just think about it. Okay. It echoed through my head like a forgotten lyric you hum without realizing. And I did think about it, more than I wanted to, more than I should have. I thought about the way he looked at me, not with pity, not with flattery, but with a kind of honest reverence, like I was something rare, something seen. That morning I slipped on my robe, made tea, and took it out to the porch. The same porch I'd swept yesterday, the same creaky old wood planks I paced for years. Only now it felt different, like I was waiting for something or someone, and I hated that I didn't see him that day. His truck was gone by the time I checked the driveway. No rumble of the engine, no clang of tools from the garage, just quiet. Maybe he felt embarrassed, maybe he realized what he'd said and regretted it, maybe, and this stung, maybe. It was all some fleeting fancy that meant more to me than it did to him. By the second day, the ache had turned into a dull sort of restlessness. So I baked. When I'm confused, I bake banana bread, specifically the kind with dark chocolate chunks and a hint of cinnamon. My husband used to call it my thinking loaf. It made the house smell like something solid, something dependable, like I still had a grip on things. I had just pulled it out of the oven when I heard the knock. It was soft, hesitant. I didn't rush. I let the seconds drag out as I took off the oven mitt, smoothed down my blouse. I had bothered to wear something nice that morning, and made my way to the door. There he was, Thomas. No flowers this time, no smirk, just him, hands in his pockets, eyes searching mine like he was afraid of what he might find. "I was hoping we could talk," he said. I hesitated, then stepped aside again. "Come in." He moved slowly this time, careful, like the floor might crack beneath him. I poured us tea without asking. He took it without a word. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, steam curling up between us. Neither of us spoke for a while. He broke the silence first. I didn't sleep much either. I looked up. His eyes were tired but clear. He wasn't playing a game. This wasn't infatuation or fantasy. This was something heavier. "I shouldn't have said what I said," he went on. "Not because I didn't mean it. I meant every word. But I dropped it on you without warning. That wasn't fair." I folded my hands around my cup. "You didn't drop anything, Thomas. You told the truth. That takes courage." He blinked, surprised. "So you're not angry?" "No," I said. "Confused?" "Yes. Surprised, of course. But angry? No." His shoulders relaxed barely. "But I saw it. I thought a lot about what you said," I continued, "and about how it made me feel." He leaned forward just a little, waiting. I felt flattered and scared, and then flattered again, because it's been a long time since someone looked at me the way you do, like I'm still a woman, like I'm not just someone's mother or widow or neighbor. You reminded me of something I hadn't felt in years. He swallowed, lips parting slightly. "That's exactly it. You were still a woman, Emily." My breath caught in my throat. The way he said my name, not Miss Emily, not ma'am, but just Emily, like it belonged to him in that moment. "You're beautiful," he said. Not in a magazine way, in a real way. The kind of beauty that sits in the way you tilt your head when you laugh, or the way you fold towels, or hum when you think no one's listening. I felt something crack open in me. A dam. Maybe one I didn't realize I'd built. I looked down, blinking fast. "You know how long it's been since anyone noticed those things?" I whispered. He reached out slowly, like asking permission with his fingers before they even touched mine. And when they did, warm, steady, it was like every nerve in my hand lit up. "I notice," he said. We sat like that, fingers brushing, breath shallow, no words needed for a minute. Then I pulled back. "Thomas, this can't be simple." "I'm not asking for simple," he replied. "I'm asking for honest. I know the world might not get it. Hell, I'm sure there are people who judge me 6 ways to Sunday, but I've never cared about them. I care about you." I stood and walked to the window, arms crossed tight over my chest. "You're young. You still have everything ahead of you. I've already lived a life." He got up too, stepping beside me. "And that life made you you. Do you know how much wisdom, how much grace lives in you? You think I want someone my age who's still trying to figure out who they are? I know who you are and I admire the hell out of it." I turned to face him, inches apart. "You know this would change everything," I said. "I'm counting on it," he replied. There was no kiss. Not yet. Just silence. Tension. A promise unspoken, suspended in the space between us. He didn't push. He didn't beg. He just smiled, soft and patient, then left, saying, "I'll see you soon." And as I watched him walk away, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wanted to be seen. I wanted someone to ask the questions no one else dared, to stir the stillness in me. And Thomas, he had just done that with a few flowers, a few honest words, and the courage to knock on my door. The week that followed felt like living in two separate worlds. In one, I was still Emily, the woman who clipped coupons from the paper, watered her hydranone at dusk, and made lists before heading to the store. In the other, I was something else. Someone else. A woman who woke up each morning with a buzz beneath her skin, wondering if she'd see him today, wondering if what was happening was really happening, or just some beautiful flicker of fantasy set to fade the moment the real world looked in. Thomas didn't come by right away again. He gave me space, time, but he didn't disappear. He texted once. Just a simple message. "Still thinking about you. Hope your tea was strong today." I stared at those words longer than I cared to admit. The care in them, the tenderness, how strange and how lovely it felt to be thought of. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what to say. But I smiled. And I held that smile for the better part of the evening, even when the tea had gone cold, and the silence crept back in. It was 2 days later when I saw him again. I had gone for a walk around the block, something I did more often now, just to keep my legs moving and my thoughts straight. The sun was low, painting everything gold, and the air had that late spring sweetness that made you want to linger just a little longer before heading inside. I was turning the corner back toward my house when I saw him in his driveway, wiping his hands with a rag, a toolbox open beside him. His shirt was strewn with grease, and he was humming something I didn't recognize. His back turned. I should have kept walking or at least waved and gone inside, but instead I stopped. He sensed me before he saw me. Something I noticed he did a lot. His head turned just slightly, then fully, and when our eyes met, that same familiar smile spread across his face. "Evening," he said. "Car trouble." "Not trouble, just tuning her up." He gestured to the open hood. "She's old but reliable." I chuckled. "That sounds familiar." He tilted his head. Was that a self-burn? Maybe. I paused. Maybe I'm feeling brave today. Thomas wiped his hands clean, tossed the rag into the box and stepped closer. "I like you, brave." I didn't look away. "I've been thinking too." "Yeah." I nodded. "About you. About this? About what it could mean." He waited. "And I'm still scared," I admitted. "But I'm also curious." A spark lit in his eyes. "Emily, if all we ever do is talk, that's enough for me. I just want time with you, to know you." The sincerity in his voice was like a balm. Steady, warm. "You free tomorrow?" he asked. I raised a brow. "You asking me on a date?" He grinned. "If you want to call it that." I was thinking coffee or a walk down by the lake. Nothing fancy. I hesitated for half a breath, then nodded. "I'll write tomorrow." And that's how I found myself the next afternoon standing in front of my closet like a teenager again, agonizing over what to wear. I must have tried on 5 outfits. Too casual, too formal, too frumpy, too trying too hard. Eventually, I settled on a soft blue blouse that brought out the gray in my eyes and a pair of slacks that fit just right. I even curled my hair a little, added a dab of lipstick. As I looked in the mirror, I felt something unfamiliar stirring me. Excitement. He picked me up at 3. I hadn't been picked up for anything in years. He didn't bring flowers this time. Just a shy smile and a compliment that turned my cheeks warm. We drove in his truck, windows down, music playing low, something folksy and slow, and talked like we'd been doing it forever. At the lake we found a quiet bench shaded by tall trees, the water glittering in the sun. Families were out. Ducks waddled near the shore. A couple of teens were skipping rocks in the distance. We sat close but not touching. And we talked about his work, his dreams of starting his own business someday, about his mother, how much he missed her, how she'd always told him to trust his instincts. He asked about my husband. I hadn't expected that. What was he like? Thomas asked gently. I stared out at the lake, steady, kind, funny when he wanted to be. We had a good life. Not perfect but good. Do you miss him? Every day, I said honestly, but not in the same way I used to. First, I missed his presence. Then I missed the routine. Now I missed the feeling of being known. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and this time he did take my hand. I didn't pull away. You deserve to be known again, he said. And not because of what you were to someone else, but because of who you are right now. I blinked quickly, the weight of those words landing deeper than I expected. Squeezed his hand back. We sat like that until the sun began to dip. And as we stood to head back to the truck, he turned to me, his expression serious. I don't want to rush you, he said. I know this isn't simple, but I meant what I said before. I'm here if you want to explore this, whatever this is. I nodded slowly. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to find out. And then gently, without pressure, he leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Just there, light, warm enough to make my skin hum. It was the first touch of something new. And as we drove home, windows down again, breeze in my hair, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. The house felt different when I stepped back inside that evening. The air was the same, the creak in the hallway floor still there, the scent of lavender from the diffuser in the corner still drifting gently through the rooms. And yet everything felt touched by something softer, as if the walls themselves had breathed in a day with me and were quietly waiting to see what I'd do next. I set my purse down, slipped off my shoes, and walked slowly into the kitchen. The roses on the counter had finally started to sack, the pleats curling at the edges, their soft pink color now a faded blush. I didn't throw them out. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to them. Not when they'd been the first sign of something awakening. I sat at the table, staring at nothing in particular, letting the hum of the refrigerator and the memory of Thomas's voice fill the quiet. He had dropped me off with that same smile, the one that somehow made me feel safe and flustered all at once, and said, I'll call you tomorrow. Unless I get impatient, then I'll show up with coffee. I had laughed, but now hours later it didn't seem funny. It seemed comforting, like he was placing breadcrumbs gently for me to follow if I wanted. Not forcing me, not pushing, just opening the door. The thing is, I'd lived my life quietly for so long. After my husband died, I didn't even consider the possibility of another man. Not seriously. I had convinced myself that part of my life was over, that I'd had my chance, my great love, and now it was time to fade gently into the background. And maybe I had made peace with that. Or maybe I just got used to the loneliness. But now I was unsettled in the most beautiful way. I touched the side of my neck without thinking, remembering the way Thomas looked at me across the lake. Not lustful, not boyish, but full of something deeper. He didn't see a woman past her prime. He saw me, all of me, and he wasn't scared of what came with that. The next few days moved with an odd rhythm. He didn't push. We texted here and there, playful, thoughtful messages that made me smile every time my phone buzzed. One morning I found a note taped to my mailbox. You make the neighborhood look better. Just thought you should know. And no one had ever written me something like that. Not even my husband in his prime. I stood there holding it, the paper fluttering slightly in the breeze, heart beating louder than it should have. We began seeing each other more after that. Walks in the park. A quiet dinner on his back patio where he grilled steaks and we laughed over a bottle of wine. At first it was slow, careful, but beneath it something was growing, warmth, trust, longing. Then came the evening, everything changed. It was a Thursday. I'd made shepherd's pie, the dish my husband used to request every birthday, and I invited Thomas over. He showed up early, dressed in a soft gray Henley and jeans, holding a bottle of wine and a crooked smile. You keep feeding me, he said. I'm going to start making excuses to come over every night. Who said I'd mind that? I replied before I could stop myself. He paused, watching me, his expression softening. You wouldn't. I turned toward the kitchen, but not before he saw the smile I couldn't hide. We ate, we talked, we laughed, especially when he dropped his fork and pretended it was the wine getting to him. And when the dishes were cleared, we sat on the couch, sipping what was left of the bottle, the television on but ignored. I like being here, he said quietly. I like having you here. He reached for my hand again. He always did it gently, never assuming, and I let him. Our fingers interlocked like they had done it 1,000 times before. There was a moment, so silent it rang in my ears, when I felt him looking at me, and I turned my head to meet his eyes. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice paring more than a breath. I nodded, and when his lips touched mine, it wasn't fire. It wasn't frenzy. It was deep water, calm and vast and consuming in a way I hadn't known I missed. We pulled back slowly. I touched his face, traced the line of his jaw, and smiled. You're not afraid of what this is, are you? He shook his head. No, I've never felt more certain of anything. He didn't stay the night. We weren't there yet. But as he left, brushing one more kiss against my forehead at the door, I knew we'd crossed a line. Quietly, respectfully, fully. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. Not the mirror I usually avoided, not the one that reminded me of passing years and softened edges, but the mirror in the hallway, the one where I used to check my lipstick before church. And I saw someone different, not because I was younger, but because I had returned to myself. This wasn't about a boy chasing something forbidden. This was about two people from different generations, yes, but connected by something real, something unexpected, and something that, oddly enough, made perfect sense in its own strange way. Thomas didn't rescue me. He reminded me that I wasn't done living, and that gift was more beautiful than any bouquet of flowers. The roses finally wilted and had to be thrown away. But their memory remained in every glance, every shared silence, every soft brush of his hand against mine. What started as a surprise at the door had become something I never thought I'd find again. A second chance, and I was brave enough to take.